Hi, I'm Aaron and I'm your host for Short Lessons in Native North American Theater. For the 6th episode in our series, we'll be diving into the life of author and playwright Diane Glancy.
Diane Glancy is an award-winning poet, author, and playwright. Born Helen Diane Hall, Glancy started life in 1941 in Kansas City, Missouri. Her brother was born 3 years later, in 1944. Glancy's father, Lewis Hall, was of Cherokee descent, and Glancy's mother, Edith Wood Hall, was of English-German descent. This mixed heritage background started her struggle with identity issues early on in life. My mother was blonde and blue-eyed, and when my teachers would see her, was I adopted? What nationality was I? That was my first separation from identity, from knowing that I was not this and I was not that. Glancy had little help with this identity struggle since she felt that neither side of her mixed heritage wanted to claim her as one of their own. I was born between two cultures. My father was Cherokee, my mother English and German. But we weren't Cherokee enough to be accepted as Indian, nor was I white enough to be accepted as white. I could walk in both worlds, I could walk in neither. I lived in a no-man's land that moved. These identity issues were further complicated by her own mother's dislike of Cherokee culture. Glancy's mother was not accepting of her husband's Cherokee heritage and, according to Glancy, would often be much more extroverted and cheerful when in the presence of her own side of the family, rather than in the presence of the Cherokee side of the family, or when in the presence of Lewis and Diane themselves. Edith's rejection of Cherokee culture went far enough to necessitate a name change. I was so dark and she was so light. I think it was a shock. She was going to name me Linda, she said, until she saw what I looked like. Why, she married a dark man and expected a blonde child. What's her problem? This divide between mother and daughter eventually drove Glancy towards finding her own identity. Thanks to her good relationship with her father, Glancy became a churchgoer and eventually chose to identify as Cherokee rather than English-German. She credits her father as her salvation during her childhood years, as well as cites him as a big influence in most aspects of her life. My father was my big hero in life, while I had more conflict with my mother. He was a man that took us to church. He was a very strong influence. My father's Cherokee heritage has been the most important influence I've had. It wasn't until after Glancy graduated from Normandy High School in 1959 that she would run into problems from having her dad as a role model. After high school, Glancy ended up enrolling at the University of Missouri, majoring in English literature. In 1963, during Thanksgiving season of her senior year, Glancy needed to find a ride back home. A friend referred her to a young Irish man named Duane, who was also going home back to St. Joe, Missouri. In May of 1964, Glancy married Duane and received her bachelor's degree. The only problem was that Duane was an alcoholic. I had a good model, my father. It didn't dawn on me that all men weren't like my father. Glancy describes her married years as being like she was trying to drive a loaded 18-wheeler up a sandy incline, but the marriage did result in the births of her son, David in 1964, and her daughter, Jennifer, in 1967. It was also during her marriage to Duane that Glancy started writing. After getting married and graduating, Glancy moved with her husband to Tulsa, Oklahoma, only 100 miles away from the birthplace of her great-grandfather, Woods Lewis. Driving across Oklahoma and connecting with the land and reconnecting with her heritage got Glancy thinking about a destiny other than raising kids and being a housewife. Glancy's newfound interest in writing led her to become artist-in-residence for the State's Arts Council of Oklahoma in 1980, a position she would hold until 1986, as well as driving her to pursue her master's degree in English at the University of Central Oklahoma. Duane's drinking during this time culminated in outbursts. He once said, "What do you have to write about anyway?" The couple divorced in 1983, the same year Glancy earned her master's degree. Glancy was a single mother of 2 kids, a writer who had not had her work published yet. Glancy wouldn't get her first published work until 1984. She later met Gerald Stern at a writers' conference in Tucson in 1984. He encouraged her to continue her education and earn her Master's of Fine Arts at the Iowa Writers' Workshop at the University of Iowa. After expressing concerns about money problems, Stern helped Glancy get an Equal Opportunity Fellowship, which allowed her to attend the Writers' Workshop in 1987. She then received an offer from her friend Alvin Greenberg to teach at Macalester College. It was an all-male faculty, though there was one woman who soon retired, and they had received some pressure. They needed women and minorities. Since I fit those categories, the Native American, the mixed blood, the woman, he hired me. Glancy commuted back and forth between Macalester College and the University of Iowa while she finished earning her Master's of Fine Arts, which she earned later that year. However, Macalester did not prove to be a safe haven, as Glancy's identity struggles would continue here. I was always arguing for my position and my promotion and all of that. I always felt a sense of alienation there too, come to think of it, because I just didn't have the importance of the other professors. I didn't have a PhD, I only had an MFA from Iowa. Did I really belong there? I could see that on their faces. They had done it the right way, and I was there because we were in this new age of multiculturalism and they had to let in otherness. They didn't like it. After much struggle, Glancy earned her promotions. She stayed on as a professor at Macalester College, teaching creative writing until retiring in 2009. Today, Diane Glancy's writing career, which has grown to span the fields of poetry, fiction, non-fiction, and playwriting, is littered with countless awards and fellowships. Her collection Iron Woman, which contains 58 poems dealing with the joy and pain of living in her two worlds, won the 1988 Capricorn Poetry Prize. Her collection of short story fiction, Trigger Dance, deals with similar subject matter in that it consists of 14 stories of individuals caught between white and native cultures, and also won the 1990 Charles and Mildred Nillen Fiction Award. Her nonfiction book, Claiming Breath, a collection of notes, poems, and thoughts which detail a year spent traveling back and forth between Oklahoma and Arkansas teaching poetry in schools, won both the 1991 North American Indian Prose Award and the 1993 American Book Award. A similar book, The Cold and Hunger Dance, dealing with Glancy's childhood and her experiences with trying to coexist in two worlds in her present everyday life, was a finalist for the 1999 Oklahoma Book Award. Glancy had many other works nominated for the Oklahoma Book Award, such as The Stones for a Pillow, Ado Ration, and The Voice That Was in Travel, but it wasn't until 2003 that she won the award for her book The Mask Maker. 2003 also found her winning the Juniper Poetry Prize and a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship for her work Primer of the Obsolete, which explores Glancy's struggles of trying to merge the cultures of Cherokee, white, Christian, and conjuration into one human being through a collection of poems. Glancy has also started exploring a new writing field. While Glancy has written and won awards for scripted work before, such as with her plays Stick Horse and Sigwohi, Glancy has also recently stepped into writing and directing movies, having completed 5 projects: Ride Between the Worlds, On the Shore of Their Country, The Dome of Heaven, 4 Quarters, and Senior Scorpion, Senior Fish since 2007. Glancy continues to teach by guest lecturing at colleges. Her latest work, The Book of Bearings, is out now, and she is currently enjoying a residency at the Grant Wood Art Colony, located at the University of Iowa, where she is hard at work on a libretto for a stage adaptation of her novel, Pushing the Bear.
This concludes our journey into the life of Diane Glancy. Thank you for watching Short Lessons in Native North American Theater. See you next time.